outrage in the wake of an 11-year-old girl found dead on Christmas Day of all things. Cops are focusing on a registered sex offender with a rap sheet. Sarah Haley Foxwell's body was discovered just 3 days after she was reportedly last seen by her little sister. The news totally devastating to her Delaware neighbors.
At approximately 4 p.m. this afternoon, a ground search crew in the area of Melson Road, just west of Hamden Court, located the body of 11-year-old Sarah Foxwell.
30-year-old Thomas Leggs Jr. has now been charged with kidnapping and burglary. He's behind bars with no bond. While Leggs is the focus of the investigation, the sheriff tells Issues they are not rushing to hit him with a murder rap until they have all the evidence, including DNA. It pains me to report that Leggs is a registered sex offender in 2 states, Maryland and Delaware. In Delaware, he's listed as high risk. Police say he was the last person seen with this precious child. Sarah and her kid sister live with their aunt. This suspect was reportedly the aunt's ex-boyfriend. Unfortunately, this kind of development has become way too predictable. How many times have we seen this pattern before? How many times do we have to say these things over and over again? Cops say a, quote, juvenile witness reportedly Sarah's 6-year-old sister saw Sarah leave their bedroom with, quote, Tommy, allegedly Thomas Leggs. Sarah's aunt, meanwhile, told cops the child's toothbrush was missing. A green toothbrush was found in a truck that police say Leggs admitted to driving. They also found a lollipop. This makes me sick to my stomach. Straight to my amazing panel of guests, back with John Lusich and Dr. Dale Archer. Plus, we are, again, delighted to have with us Judge Larry Seidlin. He, of course, presided over the dramatic Anna Nicole Smith body custody case, and, as you may remember, he became quite emotionally involved in that case. But first, straight out to Michelle Segona of michellesegona.com. Michelle, you've been doing some digging all day. What is the very latest on this very sad case?
Well, I spoke with Sheriff Lewis earlier today, and this case is ruled a homicide, and there are multiple causes of death surrounding Sarah and her murder. But those particular, all of those details are not being released yet. The grand jury does meet 2 times a month, and later on this month, more charges may come about in addition to the abduction and burglary charges. On the evening that Sarah went missing, or I should say the early morning hours, her grandfather was home at the time. Her legal guardian, her aunt, was not home, and Sarah's 6-year-old sister, who shares a room with her, woke up to hear Thomas allegedly in the room talking with Sarah. Then at some point they disappeared. She was then reported missing later on that morning, and within 2 hours, Wicomico County Sheriff's officers had him in custody and charged within 2 hours of Sarah's disappearance. On a side note, Leggs was only required to check in with Wicomico County Sheriff's Office 2 times a year. He had just checked in early December, but the sheriff's deputies had gone out to his residence 7 times within 2009 and found him living in an 8x4 shed on his parents' property. Also living at the property was his sister and her 3 children, which now a separate investigation is underway to see if those children have been harmed.
He's a registered sex offender. What is he doing with kids? The sheriff didn't hold. Okay, I need help here. Judge Larry Seidlin, jump in.
Jane, these sex offenders have a high recidivism rate. We have to keep them on a shorter string. We have, as a society, have to decide how many parole officers we want out there, how many probation officers. They're overworked. So we have to keep an eye on these sex offenders. We should be checking on where they are at all times.
How many cases have we covered where the parole officer or the probation officer goes right to the door and knocks on the door, doesn't realize there's a bunch of kids in the backyard?
Oh, I get frustrated. What about the fact that the aunt knew Leggs was a registered sex offender and she had him around the children that she had legal guardianship of? And also the fact that Leggs's parents and sister knew that Leggs is a registered sex offender and had him living on their property, knowing there are 3 children in the household. Frustrating. Very frustrating.
Where there were kids living for years, and a suspect was raping a woman repeatedly for decades, and the parole and probation officers didn't figure it out. Now, the sheriff didn't hold back in the wake of this truly grim, heart-wrenching discovery. Here's what he had to say on, of all things, Christmas Day.
If there's ever been a case that screams for the death penalty, it's this one. But we are obviously going to have to work for the next several hours, well into tomorrow, processing this crime scene. We're going to give this victim all the dignity and all the respect that she deserves. But we're going to slow down. We are going to methodically process this crime scene so we leave no stone unturned tonight. We're going to recover every single piece of evidence that is needed to successfully put this man behind bars. We know he's the one who did it, and he's going to pay the price.
Legs is a registered sex offender in 2 states. In Maryland, he's listed as a child sex offender. In Delaware, his risk level is listed as high. In Delaware, in 2001, he was convicted of raping a victim who was 16 or 17. He also has several assault convictions. Okay, Dr. Dale Archer, these kids were living with their aunt. Where is mom and dad? Where are social services? Where is anybody looking out for these young children ages 6 and 11 with this creepola in their midst?
Well, it's the same old story, Jane, and I think that the message to all women out there is very simple. If you start dating a guy, go online to your sexual offender registry in your state, and you can find out exactly whether they're on that or not, and if so, what tier they are, 1, 2, or 3. If he was checking in every 6 months, it means he was a tier 2, which is middle of the road in terms of potential recidivism. But given that once every 6 months is just not enough to be...
Oh, what about if they use one of their aliases, Doctor? God. I guess I'd have to search all the pictures because they may not give them the right name.
These are parents themselves, and the victim is a child, and it's all happening at Christmas. You know the hunt for this killer will be relentless.
As a parent of a 14-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son,
have
this really hits home and hits me deeply. And I promise you, we will do everything in our power to see this man never, ever sees the day of light again.
John Lusich, we have to completely revamp our criminal justice system. We're locking up more people than any other country in the world, and yet we're not stopping these people. How about taking some of the money that we spend, the billions, housing and feeding a bunch of people who are basically fast-tracked into the criminal justice system, and spending it on not only prevention, but getting more parole officers, getting more probation officers, really keeping track of people like this who, as the judge said, have this hugely high recidivism rate, almost a ticking time bomb.
Absolutely. But my way to do things is even cutting costs, just give them the death penalty, end of story. You can't stop these guys from hurting little children. It happens time and time again. Take a look at J.C. Dugard. Cops and the parole officer went out and saw this guy living on the property with these little kids and did nothing. On and on. Government has failed time and time again. We need tougher laws. We need tougher penalties. I say put them to death.
Well, yeah, I say let's kill and lock up everybody.
Wait a second. I don't ever remember cops and parole officers going to the house where J.C. Dugard was and literally seeing the girls. That's what he just said. I don't recall that ever being said. I remember the police going there and the probation officer going there, but no mention was ever about that there were children there. Wish everybody would get their stories right.
The problem of catching these people before. I want to save lives. I want to save lives before they get. Yes, but it's a cycle. We've got to intervene earlier. That's my point.
There's no cycle. They're dead. They're gone. They're done.
But that's the individual. I'm talking about the societal cycle. Coming up, my holiday travel nightmare. I almost didn't make it here today, people, after